What happens when a casual conversation about art and authenticity spirals into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history? When Ethan Hawke sat down on Kelly Clarkson's show, nobody expected the interview to derail so spectacularly that he would actually get up and leave mid-con conversation. This is not clickbait. This actually happened, and the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Before we get into exactly what was said that made Ethan walk off set, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below telling us what you think about celebrity interviews that go off the rails. The interview started innocently enough. Kelly was in her usual upbeat mode, welcoming Ethan to the stage with her signature warmth. The audience applauded as he settled into the guest chair, and for the first few minutes, everything seemed perfectly normal. Kelly leaned forward with a bright smile. "So, Ethan, you have been in this industry for decades now. You have done everything from romantic dramas to intense character studies. What keeps you going? What is the fire that still burns after all these years?" Ethan nodded thoughtfully, taking a moment before responding. "I think it is the pursuit of truth." "Really? I have never been interested in being famous or being liked. I am interested in doing work that matters, work that says something real about the human condition. The moment you start chasing approval or box office numbers, you have lost the plot entirely." Kelly smiled, but there was a slight shift in her expression. "That is interesting because you say you are not interested in being liked, but you are here on a talk show. I mean, talk shows are kind of all about connection and likability, right?" The audience laughed lightly, but Ethan's face remained serious. "Sure, but I am here to talk about the work, not to perform some sanitized version of myself. There is a difference between genuine connection and the performance of likability that most of these shows require." There was a brief awkward pause. Kelly's smile wavered just slightly. "Well, I like to think we do things a little differently here. We try to have real conversations. Do you, though?" Ethan asked, his tone not aggressive but genuinely questioning. "Because I have done a lot of these shows and they all say that. They all say they want real conversation. But what they actually want is for you to tell a funny anecdote, plug your project, and make everyone feel good. Nobody actually wants to dig into anything uncomfortable or challenging." Kelly shifted in her seat. "I mean, we definitely dig into real topics. We have had some incredibly emotional and deep conversations on this show. Just last week, we talked about mental health, about loss, about struggles people face every day. Right? But that is curated depth," Ethan countered. "That is depth that has been pre-approved and packaged for mass consumption. Real depth, real art. It makes people uncomfortable. It asks questions that do not have easy answers." Kelly's smile was now clearly forced. "Okay, but Ethan, not everything has to be uncomfortable to be meaningful. Sometimes joy is just as important. Sometimes making people laugh or feel good is valuable too." "Of course it is," Ethan agreed. "But let me ask you something, Kelly. When is the last time you took a real risk on this show? When is the last time you said something or did something that might actually alienate part of your audience?" The atmosphere in the studio had shifted noticeably. The audience was quiet now, sensing the tension building between host and guest. Kelly's smile disappeared entirely. "I take risks all the time," she said, her voice measured. "I talk about things that matter to me. I share my vulnerabilities. That is risk." "Is it though?" Ethan pressed. "Sharing pre-approved vulnerabilities that have been workshopped and focus grouped. That is not risk, Kelly. That is brand management." The audience gasped audibly. Kelly sat back in her chair, her jaw tight. "Wow. Okay. I did not realize you had such strong opinions about how I run my show. This is my show, by the way. The show that has been on air because people connect with what we do here." "I am not attacking you personally," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. "I am talking about the system, the machine that turns everything into content, into product. You are part of that machine whether you want to admit it or not." "And you are not." Kelly shot back, her composure cracking. "You are sitting here promoting a movie, Ethan. You are part of the exact same machine. At least I am honest about what this is. You are sitting here acting like you are above it all while benefiting from it." Ethan paused, his expression hardening. "You are right. I am here promoting something. But the difference is I am not pretending this is some sacred space for authentic conversation. You ask me what keeps me going, and I am giving you an honest answer. I am sorry if that is not the soundbite you wanted." Kelly stood up suddenly, her hands raised. "You know what, Ethan? I think we need to take a break. Can we cut to commercial?" But Ethan was already standing too. "No, I think we are done here. Actually, this is exactly what I am talking about. The moment things get even slightly uncomfortable, we cut away. We sanitize. We protect the audience from anything that might challenge them. Ethan, sit down, Kelly said firmly. We are professionals. We can have a disagreement without you walking out. Can we, though? Ethan asked. Because it seems like the disagreement is the problem. It seems like the fact that I am not playing along is the issue. And if I am not allowed to be honest, then what is the point of being here? Kelly crossed her arms, her voice rising slightly. You are allowed to be honest, Ethan. But you are also a guest on my show, and there is a level of respect that comes with that. I welcomed you here. I asked you genuine questions, and you have turned this into some kind of lecture about authenticity and art. Like I am some sellout who doesn't understand real creativity. Ethan shook his head. I never called you a sellout, but you asked me what drives me. And when I told you, you got defensive. You wanted the palatable answer, the inspiring quote that fits in a 30-second clip. When I gave you the real answer, suddenly I am being disrespectful. The real answer? Kelly's voice was sharp now. The real answer is you talking down to me in my show. That is not honesty, Ethan. That is arrogance. You think because you have been in a few acclaimed indie films that you have some moral high ground over everyone else in entertainment. I never said that, Ethan replied, his tone still calm, but his eyes flashing with frustration. But since you brought it up, yes, I do think there is a difference between making art and making content. I think there is a difference between creating something because you have something to say and creating something because it tests well with audiences. Kelly laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Oh, so I am just making content now. The show where I talk to people about their lives, where I celebrate their achievements, where I try to bring a little light into people's day. That is just empty content to you. I did not say it was empty, Ethan said. I said it was curated. There is a difference. Curated, Kelly repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. That is a nice way of saying fake, is it not? That is what you are really saying. That what I do here is not real. What I am saying, Ethan said slowly, carefully, is that there are constraints on what is allowed to be said and explored in a format like this. Those constraints exist because of advertisers, because of network standards, because of the need to appeal to the broadest possible audience. And those constraints necessarily limit how deep or how real any conversation can actually get. So enlighten me, Kelly said, sitting back down but perched on the edge of her seat. What would a real conversation look like to you? What would you want to talk about that is so edgy and provocative that it cannot happen on my show? Ethan sat back down slowly, as if reconsidering his position. All right, fine. Let me ask you something real then. Do you ever feel trapped by your own image, by the expectation that you have to be the sunny, uplifting presence all the time? Do you ever want to just scream or break down or say something mean? But you cannot because that is not what Kelly Clarkson does. Kelly stared at him for a long moment. The audience was completely silent now, every eye locked on the exchange. Of course I do, she finally said, her voice quieter. Everyone feels that way sometimes. But that does not mean I am fake, Ethan. It means I am professional. It means I understand that this show is not about me and my darkness. It is about giving people something positive in a world that is already full of negativity. But is that not exhausting? Ethan pressed. Is that not its own kind of prison? Maybe, Kelly admitted. But it is a prison I chose. And honestly, most days it does not feel like a prison at all. Most days I genuinely love what I do. I love connecting with people. I love making them smile. Just because it is not tortured and complex does not make it less valid. I am not saying it is not valid, Ethan said. I am saying there is a cost to it. There is a cost to always being on, to always performing positivity, and I think we as a culture have become addicted to that performance. We have lost our tolerance for anything that feels difficult or uncomfortable. Kelly nodded slowly. Okay, I can actually agree with that to some extent. But Ethan, you are doing the same thing in reverse. You are performing this tortured artist thing. You are performing intellectual superiority. You are sitting here acting like you are the only person in the room who cares about real art. And that is its own kind of performance. That hit differently. Ethan's face shifted, something flickering across his expression that looked almost like recognition. Maybe you are right, he said quietly. Maybe I am performing too. Maybe we all are, all the time, and there is no way out of it. So, what are we even arguing about then? Kelly asked, spreading her hands. If we are all performing, if there is no escape from it, then why are you sitting here criticizing my performance while defending your own? Because some performances are more honest than others, Ethan said. Because some performances at least acknowledge the artifice, and some pretend it does not exist at all. Kelly shook her head. You know what? I think you are just uncomfortable with joy. I think you are so committed to this idea that real art has to be dark and challenging that you cannot accept that something light and uplifting can also be meaningful. That is not depth, Ethan. That is just cynicism. It is not cynicism, Ethan said, his voice rising for the first time. It is realism. The world is not a happy place, Kelly. People are suffering. The planet is dying. Democracy is crumbling. And we are all sitting here in our little bubbles of entertainment, pretending everything is fine, pretending that if we just smile hard enough, it will all work out. So what is your solution? Kelly demanded. We all just sit around being miserable? We all just wallow in how terrible everything is? That is not helpful, Ethan. That is not productive. I am not saying we should wallow, Ethan shot back. I am saying we should face it. I am saying art should help us face it, not distract us from it. And I am saying that sometimes people need the distraction, Kelly countered. Sometimes people need the break. Sometimes people need to laugh and forget for just 1 hour that the world is falling apart. That is not evil, Ethan. That is mercy. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. For a moment, he looked genuinely uncertain, as if Kelly's words had penetrated something he had been trying to keep protected. The silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Kelly softened slightly, seeing something shift in Ethan's demeanor. Look, she said more gently. I get what you are saying. I do. And maybe you are right that we avoid difficult conversations sometimes. But you are acting like entertainment has no value unless it is making people confront their demons. And that is just not true. Entertainment can heal. It can comfort. It can remind people that there is still beauty and laughter in the world. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands. I know that, he said quietly. I do know that. But I also know that we are living through a moment of profound crisis, multiple crises, actually. And the entertainment industry is largely pretending none of it is happening. We are fiddling while Rome burns, and I cannot shake the feeling that we are complicit in our own destruction. Kelly leaned forward. Okay, but Ethan, you are an actor. You make movies. How is what you do any different from what I do? You are still in entertainment. You are still asking people to pay attention to you, to buy tickets, to stream your content. You are not out there organizing or protesting or building shelters. You are making movies. That is fair, Ethan admitted. But I try to make movies that ask questions, that challenge assumptions, that make people think about things differently. I am not always successful, but that is the intention. And you do not think I do that? Kelly asked. You do not think having conversations about mental health, about grief, about overcoming adversity, you do not think that helps people think about things differently? I think it helps people feel better about things, Ethan said. And that is not nothing. But feeling better is not the same as understanding. It is not the same as transformation. Kelly's eyes narrowed. You know what I think? I think you are scared of joy. I think you are so invested in being the serious artist that you have forgotten how to just be present with something simple and good. Not everything has to be a philosophical debate, Ethan. Sometimes a conversation can just be a conversation. But we are not having a conversation, Ethan said, gesturing around the studio. We are having a performance of a conversation. There are cameras everywhere. There is an audience watching us. There are producers and network executives and advertisers, all with their own interests in how this goes. This is not real dialogue, Kelly. This is theater. Then why did you come here? Kelly's frustration was boiling over again. If you think this is all fake, if you think there is no value in what we do here, why did you agree to come on the show? Why not just say no? Ethan paused, and for the first time, he looked genuinely conflicted. I do not know, he said finally. Maybe because I am a hypocrite. Maybe because I want to promote my work just like everyone else. Maybe because I tell myself I can use platforms like this to say something real. But the truth is, the platform always wins. The format always wins. Kelly stood up again, and this time there was real anger in her movement. You know what, Ethan? I am tired of this. I am tired of you sitting here acting like you are trapped in some impossible situation when you made the choice to be here. I am tired of you talking down to me and my show while benefiting from the exact same system you claim to despise. If it is all so terrible, if it is all so fake, then leave. Nobody is forcing you to stay. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. You are right, he said quietly. Nobody is forcing me to stay. He stood up slowly, and the energy in the room shifted dramatically. The audience began murmuring, uncertain what was happening. Kelly's expression moved from anger to shock. "Wait, what are you doing?" she asked. "I am leaving," Ethan said simply. "You are right. I came here with my own agenda, my own pretensions, and I have been unfair to you. This is your space, your show, and I have disrespected it. So, I am going to remove myself from the situation." "Ethan, sit down," Kelly said, but her voice had lost its edge. She sounded more confused now than angry. "We can finish this conversation. We can work through this." "Can we, though?" Ethan asked. "Because I think we have just proven exactly what I was saying. The moment things get uncomfortable, the moment we push past the pleasant veneer, the impulse is to shut it down, to smooth it over, to get back to the script. And I do not want to do that anymore. Not right now. So, you are just going to walk out?" Kelly's voice was rising again. "You are going to walk off my show in the middle of a conversation. Do you have any idea how unprofessional that is? How disrespectful?" "I do," Ethan said. "And I am sorry for that. I genuinely am. But I think staying and pretending would be even more disrespectful. At least this is honest." "This is not honest," Kelly said, her voice breaking slightly. "This is ego. This is you deciding that your principles are more important than basic courtesy. This is you making a scene because you cannot handle being challenged." "Maybe," Ethan said, nodding slowly. "Maybe it is all of those things. But I still have to go." The audience was completely silent now, watching in stunned disbelief as Ethan began to walk toward the edge of the stage. Kelly stood frozen, her hands at her sides, clearly unsure whether to try to stop him or let him go. "Ethan," she called out one last time, "if you leave now, you cannot come back. You understand that, right? You walk out on this show and that is it. We are done." Ethan turned back to face her. "I understand," he said. "And I am sorry it came to this. I really am. You are talented. You are successful, and clearly people love what you do. I just cannot be part of it right now. I cannot participate in something I do not believe in." "You do not believe in having a conversation?" Kelly asked, her voice incredulous. "That is what this is, Ethan. Just two people talking. Why does it have to be more complicated than that?" "Because it is more complicated than that," Ethan said softly. "Because everything is more complicated than we pretend it is. And I am tired of pretending." With that, he turned and walked off the stage. The cameras followed him as he moved through the backstage area toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Kelly stood alone on the stage, her face a mix of anger, confusion, and something that looked almost like hurt. Kelly turned back to face the audience, her composure visibly shaken. She took a deep breath, trying to collect herself, and the cameras stayed locked on her face as she processed what had just happened. The audience remained silent, waiting to see how she would respond. "Okay," she said finally, her voice unsteady. "Well, that just happened. That was certainly not how I expected this interview to go." She let out a shaky laugh, but there was no humor in it. She looked down at her note cards, then tossed them aside. "You know what? I am not even sure what to say right now. Part of me is angry. Part of me is embarrassed. And honestly, part of me is wondering if he had a point." The audience murmured sympathetically, and Kelly shook her head. "No, seriously. I am standing here trying to figure out if I should apologize to you all for that disaster of an interview, or if maybe we all just witnessed something actually real for once. Because here is the thing, and I am just going to be honest with you. That conversation made me uncomfortable. It made me question things I do not usually question." She walked to the edge of the stage, closer to the audience. "I built this show on the idea that we can have fun. We can be light. We can celebrate people and their accomplishments without everything being heavy and dark. And I still believe that. I do. But maybe there is something to what Ethan was saying about us avoiding the hard stuff. Maybe we are all a little too comfortable staying on the surface." Kelly paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was stronger. "But you know what else? I do not think there is anything wrong with wanting to make people smile. I do not think there is anything wrong with creating a space where people can forget their troubles for a little while. Life is hard enough. If I can give someone an hour where they laugh, where they feel connected, where they feel seen, then that matters. That has value." She looked directly into the camera. Ethan said, "I am performing positivity. And maybe I am. Maybe we all perform different versions of ourselves depending on where we are and who we are with. But my performance, if that is what it is, comes from a real place. It comes from genuinely wanting to connect with people, to lift them up, to remind them that they are not alone. Kelly walked back to her chair and sat down heavily. Here's what I think happened just now. I think two people with very different worldviews tried to have a conversation and discovered they are speaking different languages. Ethan sees the world through the lens of an artist who believes discomfort and challenge are necessary for growth. And I see the world through the lens of someone who believes kindness and joy are just as necessary for survival. She leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. And the truth is, we are probably both right. The world needs artists who push boundaries and ask hard questions. But the world also needs spaces where people can breathe, where they can rest, where they can remember what it feels like to be happy. We need both. We need the people who make us think and the people who make us feel. The audience began to applaud, softly at first, then building. Kelly held up a hand. But here is what I am struggling with. Did I shut him down? Did I get defensive when I should have stayed open because he was challenging me? Yes. But was he wrong to do that? I have been thinking about this show as my safe space, my place where I get to set the tone and the rules. But is that fair? Should guests be able to push back, even if it makes things uncomfortable? She stood up again, pacing slightly. I keep replaying the conversation in my head, and I can see moments where I could have responded differently. Moments where I got protective instead of curious. Moments where I prioritized my comfort over the truth of what he was saying. And that bothers me. That really bothers me. Kelly stopped pacing and faced the audience directly. At the same time, I cannot shake the feeling that he came here looking for a fight, that he had already decided what this show was before he even sat down, and nothing I said was going to change his mind. He talked about wanting real conversation, but was he actually listening to me, or was he just waiting for his turn to lecture? She sighed deeply. I do not know. I honestly do not know. What I do know is that this got under my skin in a way that most interviews do not. Because even though I think he was unfair to me, even though I think he was performing his own version of superiority, I cannot completely dismiss what he said. There is a kernel of truth in there that I have to sit with. Kelly walked back to her chair one more time and sat down, looking tired. You know, when you do a show like this, you get comfortable. You develop a rhythm, a formula that works. You know what questions to ask. You know how to navigate awkward moments. You know how to keep things moving. And most of the time that is good. That is what makes the show work. But every once in a while someone comes along who refuses to play by the rules, and it throws everything off balance. She smiled slightly. A real smile this time. Small but genuine. And maybe that is not the worst thing. Maybe I needed someone to throw me off balance. Maybe I needed someone to make me question whether I am doing this the right way, whether there is even a right way to do this. Because the alternative is just going through the motions, just repeating the same patterns over and over without ever stopping to ask why. Kelly looked into the camera, her expression serious. So I guess what I am saying is, I am glad this happened. I am not glad it was so uncomfortable. I am not glad a guest walked out on my show in front of millions of people. But I am glad I got challenged. I am glad someone pushed me to think harder about what I am doing and why I am doing it. She took a breath. Will it change how I do the show? I do not know yet. Maybe, maybe not. But it will change how I think about the show. And that is something. That is a start. The audience applauded again, this time more enthusiastically. Kelly stood up, smoothing down her outfit. All right, she said, her voice returning to something closer to her usual tone. That was a lot. That was probably more than you bargained for when you came here today. But thank you for sitting through it with me. Thank you for witnessing that mess and sticking around. She grinned, and this time it reached her eyes. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I promise something a little lighter. I think we all need it after that. As the show cut to commercial, Kelly remained standing on the stage, staring at the empty chair where Ethan had been sitting. The cameras caught her expression before cutting away. A look of someone still processing, still questioning, still trying to make sense of what had just transpired. So, there you have it. One of the most intense and bizarre interviews in recent talk show history. Ethan Hawke walked out on Kelly Clarkson after a debate about authenticity, art, and the purpose of entertainment that neither of them were prepared for. Both made valid points. Both got defensive. Both revealed more than they probably intended. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below answering this question. Who do you think was right in this argument? Was Ethan justified in walking out, or was Kelly right that he was being disrespectful and arrogant? Let us know what you think.